The blizzard should have swallowed them whole. But when Jake Mercer found a 6-year-old girl standing guard over her mother's frozen body, clutching a red cloth stick like it was her last prayer, he knew the storm wasn't the real danger. Men were hunting them. Rich men. Law-backed men. Jake carried them through the snow, never knowing the child held the one truth that could burn an entire empire. Her father didn't die by accident. By dawn, the law tried to take her. By noon, the attorney stood at the church door with papers sharp enough to steal a child's life. And when the girl stepped forward, tiny, shaking, telling the truth no adult dared to speak, everything changed. What happened next nearly cost Jake everything he had left. Before we begin, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me where you're watching from. This Western tale travels far, but it starts right here. The wind came howling off the ridge like it meant to tear the whole valley down. Snow flew sideways, stinging, cutting. Jake Mercer pulled his coat tighter and lowered his head, letting his horse pick its own path through the drifts. He'd ridden storms before, but this one felt mean, almost like the devil himself was stirring the sky. Then he heard it. A cry. Thin. High. There. Then gone. Swallowed by the wind. Jake straightened in the saddle. Another cry. Sharper, like a child calling for help. "Easy, boy," he muttered, turning his horse toward the sound. The world was white and shifting, but he'd lived 40 winters on this land. He knew the shape of every hill, every wash, every dead cottonwood the storm tried to hide. He rode toward the old creek bed, boots banging against the stirrups, breath freezing on his beard. The cry came again, closer now. Jake swung down, boots sinking to mid-shin in the drift. He tied the reins to a low branch and pushed forward on foot, hand up against the slicing wind. Then he saw her. A tiny shape, half buried in the snow. A child. 6, maybe. Coat torn. Scarf missing. Bare hands red and raw. She stood with her feet braced apart like she was guarding something. No. Someone. A woman lay collapsed behind her. Face gray. Lips cracked. Snow crusted in her hair. No coat on her body. She must have put it over the child. Jake lifted both hands slowly. "Kid," he said quietly, "I'm not here to harm you." The girl didn't back away, didn't blink. She held a stick, just a broken branch really, wrapped with a strip of red cloth. She had it up like a spear, knees shaking. "Stay back," she said, voice rough, frost burned. Jake stopped 3 steps away. "All right, I hear you." The wind shoved hard against them. The little girl nearly lost her footing, but didn't fall. Jake's gut tightened. "Lord, give me strength." He knelt, slowly, to look at the woman behind her. One glance told him the truth. The woman wasn't dead, yet, but drifting close. Her breathing was shallow, barely a stir against the cold air. "Is she your ma'am?" Jake asked. The child nodded once. "She ain't waking up," the girl whispered, "but I gotta keep her warm. Mama said, don't leave her." Her teeth clicked so hard it sounded painful. Jake unbuttoned his sheepskin coat and held it open. "I'm gonna wrap you in this. Storm's gonna take you both if we stand here arguing." "No!" The girl backed up, planting herself tighter between him and her mother. "You don't touch her." Her boots slipped. She almost toppled. Jake lunged a hand out, but stopped before touching her. "All right." His voice softened. "I won't lay a hand on her till you say so. But you're freezing, kid. Your mama wouldn't want that." The girl's eyes flicked to her mother. Just one heartbeat. One breath of doubt. Jake used it. He swung the coat around her small shoulders in one motion. She gasped, but the warmth stunned her long enough for him to step past, slow, steady, and kneel by the fallen woman. He touched her wrist. Heat. Too much. Fever burning fast. The wound under her blouse was leaking through the cloth, a dark stain spreading. Not good. Not good at all. "She needs a fire," Jake said. "And I need tools I ain't got in my pocket." The girl hugged the coat tight. "Mama said to wait. She said the Lord would send someone." Jake looked at her. Really looked. Snow in her lashes. Blood on her knuckles. A child holding back the storm with nothing but a stick and stubborn will. "Well," he said quietly, "I reckon he just did." He lifted the woman into his arms. She was light, too light. Her head lolled against his shoulder. The girl limped beside him, clutching his coat with one hand and the red-clothed stick with the other. Jake bent, scooped her up under his free arm, and trudged toward the horse. "Hold on to me," he ordered. She obeyed without arguing this time. Another sign the storm had taken more out of her than she let show. Jake swung onto the saddle with both of them, woman across his lap, child pressed against his chest. The horse shifted uneasily under the weight. "We're going home," Jake said. "My ranch is 3 miles from here." "What if the men come back?" the girl whispered. Jake felt her small fingers clutch his shirt. He looked into the white fury ahead, jaw tightening. "Then they'll answer to me." He gave the reins a snap. The horse lunged forward. Snow swallowed them whole. Behind them, through the curtain of wind, a faint lantern glow flickered, just for a second, before vanishing. Jake saw it. Didn't say a word. But he rode harder. Because someone else was out there. And he knew storms didn't carry lanterns. The storm didn't ease. It only grew teeth. Jake kept his shoulders hunched, blocking the worst of the wind from the woman draped across his lap, and the child tucked tight against him. The mare pushed onward, head low, steam rolling off her nostrils. Every few seconds, Jake dipped his chin to check the woman's breathing. Still there. Barely. The child, Lily, he thought he heard her whisper, kept one fist twisted in his shirt, the other holding that stick with the red cloth. Her knuckles were blue-white. "You holding up, kid?" he asked. She nodded, but her head sagged. "Mama's warm," she murmured. No, Jake thought. That heat wasn't good. It was fever, running hot through a body that had lost too much blood. He muttered a prayer under his breath. Short, rough, but honest. "Lord, don't take her yet." A gust nearly shoved them sideways. Jake tightened his grip on both bodies. 3 miles, maybe less. He could make that. Had to. The girl's lips trembled. Where are we going?" "Someplace safe," Jake said. "My ranch." Her fingers tightened on the stick. "Mama said not to trust men on the road." Jake gave a tight snort. Smart woman. But I ain't on the road now. I'm taking you off it. The mare stumbled over a buried branch. Jake gritted his teeth. He shifted his weight, keeping everyone steady. Frost bit into his cheeks like needles. Lily spoke again, voice thin. She didn't fall asleep on purpose. She told me to talk to her, to keep her awake. Jake heard the pain in that. A kid trying to hold back death with nothing but a voice. You can keep talking now, he said. She might hear you. Lily looked up at him, uncertain. Go on, he urged. Tell her anything. Sing if you know something. We ain't letting her drift. She swallowed hard and began humming. A shaky tune. A Christmas hymn, broken in the middle where she forgot the words. Jake felt the weight of it, that tiny voice pushing back the storm. Behind them, the wind carried a sound, a faint clink, metal on metal. Jake didn't turn, didn't slow, but his jaw locked. Someone else was out here. Not God's business, not Mercy's business. A man's business, and the wrong kind. He nudged the mare faster. The land dipped, giving a pocket of shelter from the worst of the wind. Jake took it, guiding the horse along the low ridge until a dark shape loomed through the snow. His barn. Then the cabin. Lights off. Chimney cold. Exactly how he left it. He swung down fast, boots crunching through the crust. Lily clung tighter. I got you, Jake said. Don't let go. He carried them both to the porch, kicked snow off his boots, lifted the latch with his elbow, and pushed the door open. The cabin was black inside, smelling of cedar and dust. Jake lowered Lily first. Stay by my leg. Then he carried the mother to the bed near the hearth, a simple pine frame that suddenly looked far too small for the trouble laid upon it. He struck a match, lit the lantern, and set it on the table. Yellow light filled the room, chasing shadows to the corners. Lily's eyes widened at the brightness. Jake grabbed wood, flint, and steel. We need heat, kid. Fire'll help. She nodded and started stacking kindling the way a child who'd been taught survival would, clumsy but determined. Jake's hands moved quick. Fire lit, kettle set, blankets thrown over the woman. He unwrapped the bloody cloth at her side. The wound was bad, deep, ragged, infection spreading. He blew out a breath. Whiskey, needles, thread, boiled water. Lord help me, she's hanging by a thread. Lily stood on the other side of the bed, watching, her face tight. Mama's still here. I can feel it. Jake didn't argue. Good. Keep speaking to her. He cut away the frozen fabric, revealing bruises that weren't shaped like falls. They were shaped like fingers. A hand grabbing, pulling. He paused. Someone hurt her. Someone meant to. His chest went solid, heavy as iron. He'd seen wounds like this long ago, on the frontier, on ambush victims, on women dragged where they didn't want to go. Not an accident. Not by a long shot. He dipped a cloth into the steaming water and started cleaning the wound. The woman stirred weakly, breath rattling. Lily gasped and leaned close. Mama, Mama, I'm right here. Jake worked faster. She needs time, and heat, and the Lord's good grace. Lily touched her mother's cheek, small fingers trembling. Mama, we're safe now. Jake's eyes flicked to the window. He wasn't so sure, because in the storm's howl, faint but real, he heard it again. The same metal-on-metal clink he'd heard on the trail. Closer this time. Someone was hunting them. He reached for the rifle leaning in the corner, checked the chamber, set it where his hand could find it fast. Then he dragged another blanket over the woman, fed the fire, and knelt beside her. "You ain't dying tonight," he said under his breath. "Not on my watch. Not with your little girl praying over you." He looked at Lily, her small shoulders shaking under his coat. "Kid," he murmured, "you stay right here. I got the rest." Outside, the storm roared. But Jake knew the truth. The storm wasn't the thing he needed to fear. Not anymore. The fire caught slow, crackling low at first, like it wasn't sure it wanted to live in this storm. Jake fed it anyway. Dry chips, then thicker wood, then one long split log that threw sparks up the chimney. Warmth crawled back into the cabin inch by inch. Not fast enough. The woman on the bed shivered even under blankets, lips gone the color of ash. Fever pulsed under her skin, pushing against Jake's palm when he checked her forehead. Lily climbed beside her mother, knees sinking into the thin mattress. She held the woman's hand between both of hers, like she could heat it with pure will. "She's breathing, right?" Lily whispered. Jake nodded once. "Yeah, barely, but still breathing." He didn't add the rest. Didn't say how close she was to slipping past the edge. He dipped a cloth into the steaming kettle, wrung it out, and pressed it gently to the jagged wound at her side. She jerked at the touch, pain flaring through her even unconscious. Jake steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "I know," he murmured. "I know, hold on, ma'am." He cleaned carefully, slow strokes, wiping away the filth and frost that had clung to her skin. The cloth came up red. Too red. Lily sucked in a breath. Jake worked faster. He set the cloth aside, poured whiskey over his hands, then the wound. The woman arched, a small broken sound leaving her lips. "Mama?" Lily pressed closer. Jake grabbed the girl's wrist gently. "Don't touch, kid. Let me work. She hurts. She'll hurt worse if I don't do this." He reached for the needle and thread he kept in his old field kit. Steel flashed under the lantern light. Lily's eyes widened. "You're gonna sew her?" Jake didn't look up. "Ain't pretty, but it'll hold her together till sunrise." He threaded the needle with hands steady from a lifetime of patching men up in places far less forgiving than this cabin. He'd stitched flesh on battlefields, on cattle drives, on cold nights when wolves circled 50 yards out. But this felt different. Maybe because of the child watching. Maybe because of the Christmas wreath still hanging crooked on his back wall. A thing he'd forgotten he'd left there. He whispered another short prayer. "Lord, guide my hands." Then he set the needle into her skin. The woman twitched, breath hitching. Lily flinched, but didn't look away. It took time, too much time. But slowly, stitch by stitch, the torn edges came together. Jake tied the thread tight, wiped the blood, and wrapped a clean strip of cotton around her waist. He wasn't proud of the job, but it would keep her alive long enough for better care. He hoped. He sank back on his heels, breath heavy. His shoulders ached from bracing against cold and tension. Lily leaned forward, brushed a lock of hair from her mother's cheek. "Mama, I'm here." Jake rose and moved to the small shelf by the door. His fingers sifted through jars, dried herbs, old poultices, things he barely knew how to use. He wasn't a doctor, never claimed to be. But out here, a man learned more than he intended. He grabbed the one thing he trusted, a small tin of salve, opened it, sniffed. Sharp pine and camphor filled the air. "Rub this on her wrists and neck," he told Lily. "Little bit. Might help the fever." Lily nodded solemnly, spreading the salve with trembling fingers. Jake stepped away and checked the windows. Frosted solid. Couldn't see out. The storm pressed against the house like a giant hand, testing the wood. But the sound he heard earlier, that metallic clink, didn't come from the storm. He lifted the lantern and moved toward the back of the cabin, opened the door to the lean-to storage room. Empty, quiet, still wrong. He shut the door, bolted it. When he came back, Lily was sitting cross-legged beside her mother, whispering something soft. A prayer. He recognized the words. Old, simple, the kind a child learns before she knows what prayer really means. Jake felt it settle in the room like an extra blanket. He added wood to the fire, checked the rifle again. Then he sat on the edge of a chair, elbows on his knees. Lily looked at him, eyes too big for her face. "Are we safe?" Jake didn't answer right away. He watched the flames lick up the logs, shadows moving across the walls like shapes trying to creep closer. Finally, he said, "Safe enough for now." She swallowed. "Mama said men were chasing us." Jake's jaw worked. "I ain't asking questions tonight. Don't matter who they are. If they come here, they answer to me." Lily blinked at that. Something eased in her shoulders. She leaned down and kissed her mother's forehead. "Mama, I told you we'd find help." The woman didn't stir. Jake stood and laid the back of his hand against her cheek again. Heat still rising. Too fast. He looked at the little girl. "You did good, kid." She didn't smile, just held her mother's hand tighter. Jake turned back toward the fire and froze. A shadow moved across the far window. Just a flicker, like someone stepping past. The lantern flame trembled. Jake reached for the rifle. "Kid," he said quietly, "stay by your mama." The storm wailed, rattling the shutters, but the footstep he heard beneath it wasn't the storm's. Someone was out there, and they were getting closer. The woman stirred just past dawn. Jake had dozed sitting up, rifle across his lap, coat still damp from the storm. The fire had burned down to embers, throwing a low orange glow across the cabin walls. Wind still clawed the shutters, but not as wild as the night before. A thin sound broke the quiet. A breath. A gasp. Jake's head snapped up. The woman's fingers twitched. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she stared at the ceiling, lost, confused. Then her gaze shot to the child curled beside her. "Lily." Her voice cracked, barely more than air. Lily jolted awake and scrambled upright. "Mama! Mama, you're back!" Jake stood slowly. "Easy, kid. Don't shake her." But it was already too late. Mary Caldwell sucked in a sharp breath and tried to push herself up. Pain hit fast. She cried out, raw, panicked, and her hand shot out, grabbing for something. anything. Her fingers closed around the handle of a small kitchen knife Jake had left on the bedside table after cutting cloth. Whoa! Jake stepped back fast, palms raised. Ma'am, don't do that. Mary's eyes locked onto him, wild, hollow, lit with terror that came from somewhere deep. She pulled Lily behind her with one arm, the knife trembling in her grip. Don't touch my daughter, she rasped. Jake didn't move. I ain't touching her. Mary's gaze darted around the cabin like she was trying to piece together where she was, who he was, what had happened. She took in the blankets, the bandage at her side, the fire, and Jake standing over them. What did you do to me? Saved your life, Jake said plainly. Stitched that wound, cleaned the fever, got you out of that storm. Mary's breathing quickened. Her grip on the knife tightened. Don't lie to me. Jake kept his voice level, hands open. Ain't lying. You can ask your kid. She saw all of it. Mary turned to Lily, jaw clenched. Sweetheart, tell me. Lily didn't hide, didn't flinch. She stepped beside her mother, small but steady. He carried us, she said. Mama, you fell. You weren't moving. I yelled and he came. Mary blinked at her daughter. Confusion flickered. Then doubt. Then something colder. Fear. Jake saw it and didn't push. Just breathed slow, giving her space. Mary looked back at him. Who are you? Name's Jake Mercer, he said. Rancher up the ridge. Been here my whole life. Mary swallowed, eyes scanning him, clothes damp, hands rough, the rifle near his chair. She was trying to decide if he was a threat or a blessing. Out here, men were often both. Where did you take us? She whispered. Not far. My cabin. Couldn't get you to town in that storm. Mary's eyes sharpened. Town? She shook her head fast, wincing at the movement. No town. Jake didn't miss the panic in that. Storm's dyin'. You ain't strong enough to ride nowhere. Mary shifted, knife still between them. We need to leave. Not today, you don't. Jake's voice stayed low, firm. That fever ain't gone. And if I hadn't stitched you, you'd be buried under 3 feet of snow right now. Mary's shoulders shook. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But her eyes never left Jake. You didn't answer me, she whispered. Why did you help us? Jake didn't blink. 'Cause the Lord put you in my path. And 'cause your girl was yelling herself raw, trying to keep you alive. Lily edged closer to her mother, slipping her small hand into Mary's shaking one. Mary's throat worked. I didn't ask for help. Most folks don't, Jake said. Storms don't give 'em time. The knife wavered, just a fraction. But enough. Jake took that moment and stepped one slow pace back, showing even more space. Mary's eyes flicked to the bandage on her side. She pressed her hand to it and gasped at the tenderness. You stitched me, she breathed. Yeah. Without asking? You were dying. Mary's jaw clenched, but the fight started to drain. Not trust, just exhaustion. Her arm trembled from holding the knife too long. Lily tugged her sleeve. Mama, he really didn't do nothing bad. He saved you. Mary's breath hitched. She looked at her daughter, looked at Jake, looked at the window where the wind still pushed bone-deep cold against the glass. Slowly, painfully, she lowered the knife, not all the way, just to her lap, but her shoulders sagged like she'd been carrying the whole world. Jake finally let out the breath he'd been holding. "Thank you." "Don't thank me." Mary's voice was sandpaper. "I still don't know who you are." Jake nodded. "Then let's start slow." He reached to the stove, poured warm water into a cup, and set it on the edge of the bed, close enough for her to reach, far enough she wouldn't feel cornered. Mary stared at it a long moment, then took it with trembling fingers. "Lily," she whispered, "stay close." "I'm right here, Mama." Jake stepped back once more, giving them both the room they needed. He didn't turn his back on them, not with danger outside. But for the first time since dragging them in from the snow, he saw the woman's eyes soften. Not trust, not yet, just recognition. She was alive. Her child was safe. And for one fragile breath of morning, the storm outside wasn't winning. Jake kept his distance. Mary sipped the warm water like every swallow scraped her throat raw. Lily stayed pressed against her mother's side, small shoulder tucked under Mary's arm, eyes moving between Jake and the windows. The storm had eased, but not enough. The wind's edge still hissed along the cabin walls, whispering things the valley didn't care to repeat. Jake crouched near the fire, feeding it one more split log. He didn't look at Mary directly. Folks coming out of fear needed space, not staring. But he watched her in the glass reflection of the lantern. She was studying everything, every inch of the room, every tool on the shelf, every shadow. Survivor habits. Jake knew the type. Her hand drifted toward her neck, slow, shaky, searching for something under the edge of her torn blouse. When her fingers closed around it, she winced. A chain, thin, silver, half hidden in the blood-stained cloth. Mary eased it free and stared at the pendant hanging from it. Jake didn't move, but his eyes followed. A letter, carved deep. B, not a decoration. A mark. Something in Mary's face changed when she saw Jake looking. Not softness, but a flash of warning. She tucked the chain back fast, too fast, with fingers stiff from cold and pain. Jake straightened. "Didn't mean to pry." Mary didn't meet his eyes. "It's nothing." Jake knew that was a lie. A tired lie. The kind a person tells when the truth is a trap waiting to spring. Lily tugged her mother's sleeve, whispering, "Mama, he ain't gonna take it." Mary hushed her. "Lily." But the girl wasn't done. She looked at Jake, tiny chin lifting like she'd learned that stance from someone bigger. "Mama says the chain's important," Lily said. "It's the only thing we kept." Mary stiffened. "Lily, please." Jake didn't push, didn't want to. He'd learned long ago people revealed things when they feared less, not when corners squeezed them tight. Still, something gnawed at him. That wound hadn't come from a fall. Those bruises weren't from nature. And that pendant, carved with a single initial. He knew the families around here, the ranch names, the money trails. He'd seen that letter before, just once, on a freight wagon belonging to the Blackwood estate. Jake felt his stomach drop, slow, heavy. Lord help us. Mary caught the shift in his face. She narrowed her eyes. What? Jake didn't lie. I've seen that mark. Her breath hitched. Just a hair. Enough. Lily looked between them. Mama? Mary pressed her palm to her forehead, fighting the pain. He don't know anything, baby. Jake's voice stayed steady. Blackwood's a big family, ma'am. Mary froze. Lily opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, as if remembering something she shouldn't say. Jake watched the girl. Kids didn't hide secrets well. But when they tried, it meant someone made them practice. Mary pulled her daughter close. We appreciate your help, Mr. Mercer. Her voice frayed around the edges. But some things ain't safe to speak. Jake nodded slowly. Fair enough. He stood, walked to the door, and slid the wooden bar into place, the thick one he only used when wolves or men prowled. Mary flinched. Why are you locking us in? Storm's not done, Jake said. And I saw tracks down by the ridge last night. Wagon or rider. I couldn't tell. Mary's breath rattled. Fear crawled down her spine so clear Jake could feel it from across the room. Tracks, she whispered. Lily's small hand crept into Mary's. Jake didn't sugarcoat it. Someone's following your trail. Mary pressed a shaking hand to her mouth, shoulders curling inward. Lily whispered, Mama, is it him? Mary didn't answer. Her silence was louder than a scream. Jake stepped closer. Not too close. Ma'am, you need to tell me what you're running from. Mary shook her head hard. No. The less you know, the safer you are. Jake's jaw tightened. Kid said a man might be coming. I ain't letting danger walk through that door blind. Mary's eyes glistened. Not from softness, but from the weight of something she'd been carrying too long. He owns everything, she whispered. Land, law, people. What he wants, he gets. Jake folded his arms. Except you. Mary laughed once, a bitter, broken sound. You don't understand. Lily climbed into her lap, burying her face into her mother's chest. Mary stroked her hair with trembling fingers, wincing as the stitches pulled. Jake stared at the pair, mother holding child, child holding mother, both shaking. He moved to the shelf, grabbed a small glass vial of medicine, and set it on the table within Mary's reach. You ain't prisoners here, he said. Doors locked to keep what's outside away from what's inside. That's all. Mary's lips parted, surprised by the gentleness. Then, a knock rattled the front door. Not wind, not storm. A knock. 3 slow taps. Then silence. Mary's eyes flared. Lily whimpered. Jake grabbed his rifle. Get behind the bed, he ordered. No one argued, because whoever had found their tracks had found his cabin too. The knock didn't come again. Just those 3 taps, soft but real, then silence deep enough to hear the snow sliding off the roof. Jake stood still as stone, rifle braced against his shoulder, eyes fixed on the door. He didn't blink, didn't breathe too loud. He waited for the follow-up, the hinge test, the window rattle, the boot scrape. Nothing. The storm swallowed the world again. Behind him, Mary crouched low with Lily tucked beneath her arm, both half hidden behind the bed frame. Mary's breath came in sharp, quick pulls. Lily's was shallow, shaky. Who is it? Lily whispered. Jake didn't lower the rifle. Ain't no friend knocking in a storm like this. He stepped sideways, boots silent on the worn floorboards, gathered one quick glance through a crack between shutters. White. Wind. Empty snow. But you didn't knock with the wind howling like that unless you were close. Very close. Jake backed away. We ain't answering. Not tonight. Mary clutched Lily tighter. He found us, she breathed. He found us, Jake. Jake cut her off with a shake of his head. Don't jump to ghosts. Might be a drifter. Might be some poor fool looking shelter. Mary stared at him, pupils blown wide with fear. You don't know this man. Jake didn't argue. Some truths announced themselves without words. He slid a second bar across the door. Storm's turning. Soon as the snow lets up, I'll check the tracks. Till then, you two stay away from that wall. Mary nodded once, stiff, like her body didn't trust itself. Lily, though. Lily watched the door, not blinking. Her small fingers dug into her mother's sleeve. Jake saw the tremble starting in her shoulders. He holstered the rifle, not far, but far enough not to frighten her, and moved to the hearth. We need this place warm, he said. Fever'll kill your mam faster than any man outside. He fed wood to the fire. Sparks burst, chasing back cold shadows. But Lily didn't move, didn't sit, didn't blink. She was fighting something inside her. Jake could see it. That same desperate determination he'd seen in the storm when she stood over her mother's body with a stick the way grown men held rifles. Jake knelt beside her. Kid. She didn't answer, just pressed closer to her mother. Mary whispered, Lily, honey, lie down. Just a minute. No. The word cracked from the girl's throat. Small, but sharp. If I sleep, Mama might go. Jake's chest tightened. Mary tried to pull the girl's hand into her lap. Sweetheart, I'm right here. Lily shook her head hard enough to wobble. You were cold. I yelled and you didn't hear me. I can't let it happen again. It wasn't tantrum fear. It wasn't childish panic. It was trauma, raw from the night before. Jake sat back on his heels. How long you been awake, kid? Lily didn't answer. She bit her lip until it turned white. Mary closed her eyes. She didn't sleep in the snow either. She kept talking to me. Hours. Jake breathed out, slow. He understood now why she was swaying on her feet. Kid, Jake said softly, you're gonna drop where you stand. No. Lily gripped the bed frame with both hands. What if Mama stops breathing? She ain't stopping, Jake said. Not while I'm here. Lily stared at him, searching, weighing, measuring whether a stranger's promise counted more than her fear. Jake didn't look away. I ain't letting nothing touch her. Not the cold. Not whoever knocked. Not the fever. Nothing. Lily's lip trembled. She swayed. Jake caught her before she fell. He scooped her into his arms, light as a snowbird. She didn't fight, only curled her fingers into his shirt. I can't sleep, she whispered. Storm'll take her. Jake carried her to the hearth and sat down with her on his knee. Storm's outside, he said. Not in here. And your ma'am ain't alone now. He pulled a blanket over her shoulders and eased her back until her head rested against his chest. She resisted one last breath, one last trembling moment of stubborn will. Then her small body sagged. She was out cold before her head fully settled. Mary watched, tears sliding silently down her face. She kept me alive, she whispered hoarsely. She talked to me all night on the trail, kept slapping my cheek to make me breathe. Jake glanced at Lily's tiny hand curled against his shirt. That's a brave kid, he said. Too brave for her own good. He stood carefully, carrying Lily to the cot near the fire. He laid her down, pulled the blanket close under her chin, then straightened her stick, the one with the red cloth, against the wall beside her, and he turned the pointed end down. Gentle gesture. Non-threatening. That's how you told a child the fight was over. For now. Jake crossed back to Mary, checked the fever. Still hot, but not climbing as fast. Rest, he told her. She tried. Her eyes fluttered, then snapped open again, panic creeping back. Jake, she whispered. If he's out there, if he found us, he won't wait. He'll come again. He'll... Jake tightened the rifle strap over his shoulder. Then I'll be sitting right here when he does. Mary swallowed. Fear still sat heavy in her, but for the first time, she didn't argue. Jake pulled a chair between the bed and the door, sat down, planted his boots firm on the floor. The fire snapped, wind moaned, the storm clawed at the roof, but Jake didn't look away from that door, not once. He kept vigil like an old frontier shepherd, rifle ready, eyes sharp, breath steady, a man holding the line between two souls and the dark waiting outside. And through the quiet he whispered, Lord, watch this house tonight. Because he knew dawn would bring answers. Maybe the kind that saved them, or the kind that tore everything apart. The storm died slow. Gray light slid across the valley, revealing drifts shaped like graves and fence posts glazed in ice. Jake stepped out with his coat heavy on his shoulders, boots sinking into the crusted snow. Cold bit straight through the leather. He didn't mind. He'd walked colder mornings, but not with two lives depending on what he brought back. He saddled his horse with quiet hands, glancing once toward the cabin window. Lily still slept hard. Mary dozed, half-conscious, feverish, but holding on. He mounted up. Be back before the sun climbs, he muttered to himself. The horse snorted, breath fogging the air, and they rode towards a town. Lander looked different under a winter sky, quieter, meaner. Snow had packed along the boardwalks. Icicles hung like knives from the saloon roof. The only sounds were a hammer from the blacksmith shop and a dog barking somewhere behind the livery. Jake tied his horse and kept his hat low. Ranchers alone usually didn't draw eyes, but a man riding in early after a storm, folks tended to watch. He headed for the general store first. Bandages, fever powder, oil for the lamps. Straightforward, quick. But halfway to the door, something on the well post stopped him cold. A sheet of paper. Fresh ink. Edges not yet curled by wind. A poster. Wanted, Information regarding a missing child female, approximately 6 years old. Last seen with a woman of questionable character. Custody ordered to the Blackwood estate. Jake read it twice. 3 times. The picture wasn't perfect. Sketched fast, not by someone who cared, but it was close enough. Lily. He felt his stomach drop, slow as a stone into a well. Someone had money behind this. A lot of it. Enough to get riders out during a storm. Enough to pay folks to look the other way. Enough to make a mother into a criminal with one piece of paper. Jake didn't touch the poster. He didn't rip it down either. That'd just announce he cared. He scanned the bottom right corner for a mark. There it was, posted by order of Attorney M. Ashe. Jake muttered, "Damn." He pushed into the store. Old Grant behind the counter blinked at him. "Well now, storm didn't take you, Jake." "Not yet." "What brings you in?" "Supplies. Fever's going around my stock." Grant grunted. "Bad year for it." Jake kept his words tight. "You seen who put the posters up?" Grant didn't blink. "Tall fella. Black coat. Polite but cold. Said he'd be riding back through at noon." "Ashe," Jake said. Grant straightened. "You know him?" "Know of him." Grant lowered his voice. "He's been asking questions. About travelers. About tracks in the ridge." Jake's jaw tightened. "Anybody answer?" "Not yet. Folks don't like men who don't smile when they talk." Jake pulled his hat lower. "I'll be quick." He moved through the aisles fast. Bandages, herbs, fresh thread, a bottle of clean whiskey for disinfectant. His hands moved on their own, mind racing ahead. The poster, the tracks by the cabin, the knock. Someone was tightening the net. Jake paid, nodding as Grant bagged up the supplies. Before he could leave, a pair of ranch hands stepped into the store. One of them glanced at Jake, then at the poster outside. "Hey, Grant," the louder one drawled. "Hear about that kid? Blackwood's paying real good money." Grant didn't answer. The ranch hand continued. "Reckon whoever's hiding her's gonna be caught by nightfall." Jake didn't look up, didn't blink, but his hand curled once around the sack of supplies. He walked out slow, boots thumping on the boards. He didn't mount up right away. Instead, he walked past the last row of storefronts toward the edge of town. Tracks. Fresh ones. A single rider. Heavy horse. Headed toward the ridge. Toward his cabin. Jake's breath fogged hard. He scanned the hoof prints to see the angle, the weight, the grind. Someone had come close, turned around, doubled back. Looking. He mounted fast. "Noon," he muttered. "They'll be back through at noon." He kicked the horse into a gallop. Snow stung his face, wind slicing across his coat like thin blades. He rode harder. Mary needed medicine. Lily needed protection. And someone out there, armed with law and money, was drawing a circle around all 3 of them. By the time Jake crested the ridge, he saw it. Snow disturbed near the trees. Boot prints. A horseshoe mark with a chipped edge. Jake slid off his horse and crouched low, fingers skimming the print. "Someone was here," he whispered. Fresh. Not an hour old. He scanned the tree line. Nothing moved. Still, his hand drifted to the rifle. He led the horse the last stretch on foot, ears sharp, boots silent. When he reached the cabin door, he didn't knock. He slipped inside. Lily sat up straight in the cot, clutching her red cloth stick. Mary pushed herself upright, breath sharp but determined. Jake shut the door behind him and dropped the bar across it. "They're looking for you," he said, voice low, hard. "And they ain't far." Mary's face drained of color. Lily crawled into her lap. Jake put the supplies on the table. "Rest while you can," he murmured. "Sheriff's next if Ash don't find you first." Mary's hand shook around Lily's shoulders. "Jake," she whispered, "they won't stop." Jake didn't disagree, didn't soften it, didn't lie. "I know." He checked the window, checked the back door, checked the rifle. Then he spoke the words that hung over all three of them like a sentence. "We're running out of time." Sheriff Rudd didn't knock soft. 3 hard thumps rattled the wood, shaking dust from the rafters. Jake froze mid-step, hand wrapped around the kettle. Mary's breath hitched. Lily clung to her mother's arm, eyes round as winter moons. Jake set the kettle down slow. Then the sheriff's voice cut through the boards. "Jake Mercer, you in there?" Lord above. Jake moved to the window, careful not to show his face. He saw the horse, the badge, the posture of a man who wasn't making a neighborly visit. Mary whispered, "Jake." He raised a hand. "Quiet." Lily didn't breathe. Sheriff Rudd hit the door again. "Jake, got some questions need answering." Jake's mind worked fast. If Rudd saw Mary or the child, or the blankets, the stitched wound, the red cloth stick, he'd put the pieces together, not because he was cruel, because the law in this town answered to whoever had the money to bend it, and Blackwood money bent deep. Jake mouthed to Mary, "Hide." She nodded, barely. He moved quick, blowing out the fire with a heavy blanket. The embers hissed, smoke rising in a thick trail. He grabbed a damp cloth and pressed it over the flames until the last glow died. Cold slammed into the room instantly. Mary flinched at the loss of heat. Lily shivered so hard her teeth clicked. Jake whispered, "Back room, now." Mary gathered the child and limped toward the small pantry Jake rarely used. He followed and pulled blankets off a shelf, stuffing them under the crack at the bottom of the door to hide the glow of any stray light and to muffle any sound. Mary cupped Lily's face. "No coughing." Lily nodded, hands tight around the red cloth stick. Jake shut the pantry door. The sheriff knocked again, impatient now. "Jake, don't make me force it." Jake walked to the front door, wiped the cold sweat off his brow, and lifted the bar just enough to crack the door open. "Sheriff," he said, "storm's rough, ain't it?" Rudd narrowed his eyes. "Why's it dark in here?" "Fire went out." Jake shrugged. "Wind keeps pulling smoke back down the chimney." Rudd sniffed, eyes sliding past Jake's shoulder. "Something smells off." Jake didn't blink. "Old wood. Damp." "You letting me in?" "That depend on what you're looking for." Rudd huffed like a bull. "Got word from Lander somebody's hiding a woman and a child. Folks saw tracks heading toward your ridge." Jake leaned his weight against the door. "Storm blew tracks every which way." "Not all of them." Rudd pushed the door an inch with his boot. Jake didn't budge. The sheriff's jaw flexed. You ain't in trouble, Jake. Not unless you're keeping someone from the law. Jake met his eyes. I always follow the law. Rudd grunted. Yeah, long as the law ain't wrong. Jake's stomach tightened. Rudd lifted something from his saddlebag, a piece of cloth. Red, frayed at the edges, caught on a pum, thorn, or branch. Jake's blood ran cold. This was found near your fence line, Rudd said. Matches the color on those posters. Jake didn't look down, didn't show the hit landing. Lots of travelers come through the ridge. Rudd stepped closer. Not in a storm like that. Jake felt the world strain. One wrong breath and this cabin was a gallows. Inside the pantry, Lily stifled a cough. Mary's hand clamped over the child's mouth before the sound carried. Jake prayed Rudd hadn't heard. The sheriff's eyes drifted to the dark corners of the room. You mind if I look around? I do. That so? Cabin's cold as a grave. Let me get the fire going. Then I'll show you whatever you want. Rudd pushed past Jake's shoulder until Jake slid a boot forward, blocking him. The sheriff stared at the boot, then at Jake. Then he smiled slow, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. You're acting awful protective for a man with nothing to hide. Jake kept his voice flat. Storm ain't done. If you want to search, come back with a warrant, not rumors. Rudd lifted the red cloth scrap. Blackwood don't deal in rumors. Jake answered sharp. Blackwood ain't the law. Silence. Sharp and cold. Rudd finally stepped back. I'll be returning. Soon. And if you're harboring fugitives, Jake, I won't be asking polite next time. Jake nodded once. I'll have coffee ready. Rudd clicked his tongue, turned, and mounted his horse. Before riding off, he glanced at the window, the one closest to the pantry. Jake held breath. Rudd rode away. Jake shut the door, threw both bars across it, and waited until the hoofbeats faded into the storm. Only then did he move. He opened the pantry door. Mary slumped against the wall, breath shaking. Lily clung to her blouse, eyes wide and terrified. Jake knelt beside them. He'll be back. Mary swallowed. What do we do? Jake stood, checked the ammo in his rifle, then looked at the dying fire. We get out of here, he said, before the sheriff brings the law, or the man behind the law. Lily's voice came out thin. Jake, he saw my cloth? Jake nodded once. Yeah, kid. And that means we're running out of options. Cold crept deeper through the cabin now that the fire was dead. Mary shivered so hard her stitches pulled. Jake grabbed coats, blankets, saddlebags, anything to buy them minutes, hours. We leave at first light, he said. If we stay, he'll come back with chains. Mary clutched Lily tight. Where will we go? To the judge, Jake answered. Before Blackwood's man writes the ending for you. Outside, snow drifted in silence. Inside, 3 lives braced themselves. Time was closing in, and dawn would decide what they lost next. They left before the sun cleared the ridgeline. Snow cracked under the wagon wheels, stiff and sharp like breaking bones. Jake had hitched his horse to his old freight cart. Nothing fancy, nothing fast, but wide enough to lie Mary down without tearing her stitches open again. Mary lay on a pile of blankets, pale, jaw tight against every bump. Lily sat beside her, both hands pressed to her mother's arm like she could anchor her to this world through touch alone. Jake walked ahead, leading the horse by the reins. He didn't ride, didn't sit, didn't rest. A man on horseback left a clearer trail. A man on foot looked like someone simply moving freight. And today, lying was a form of mercy. The valley stretched cold and colorless. Pines sagged under ice. Frozen creek beds glimmered like knives. The wind cut low, whispering warnings through branches. Lily tugged at Jake's coat. "How far, Jake?" He glanced back. "Couple hours, kid." "But Mama—" "I know." Mary opened her eyes a crack. "Jake, you should leave us. Sheriff won't stop if he sees you with me." Jake shook his head once. "Ain't leaving you or the kid." "You don't understand," Mary whispered. "Blackwood, then help me understand." Mary's jaw locked, breath sharp with pain. "Knowing puts you in danger." Jake didn't blink. "Not knowing puts me in more." Mary looked away. Jake slowed the wagon over a patch of rough ice. "What's the truth, Mary?" She didn't answer. Lily watched her mother, the way kids study the moment adults break. Mary swallowed. "Just walk faster. Please." Jake's boots hit the snow harder, but the question sat heavy between them. When they reached the old split-rail fence marking the edge of Lander territory, Jake halted the wagon. "Mary." She closed her eyes. "We're going to Judge Whitaker," Jake said. "But I can't stand before him blind. Not with papers out there calling you a kidnapper." Mary flinched. Lily whispered, "Mama didn't kidnap me." "I know that, kid." The wind gusted hard across the field, rattling the wagon boards. Jake stepped closer to the blankets. "What does Blackwood want with the girl?" Mary didn't speak, didn't breathe. Then, Lily, small but braver than her size, lifted her chin. "It's the money," Lily said. "Aunt Nell said so." Mary stiffened. "Lily," but the girl pressed on, voice trembling but determined. "They want Mama gone so they can take me. For the papers. For the thing Daddy left." Jake crouched. "What thing?" Lily held out her red cloth stick like it was a pointer in a courtroom. "Something Daddy signed before he died. But Mama says it wasn't real because they made him sign when he was sick." Mary covered her face with her hand. Jake's stomach turned. "Forced signature," Mary whispered, voice breaking. "Blackwood owns the doctor, owns the witnesses, owns half the Maltstown County. They forged a guardianship claim, said I'm unfit, said Lily's safer with them. But they only want the trust, her father's trust." "And the reward posters?" Jake asked. "Made me into a monster," Mary rasped. "Said I abducted my own child, said I fled with her, said Lily's in danger with me." Jake let out a breath that burned his lungs. Half the truth, not enough to win, not enough to stand before Whitaker without being crushed by Blackwood's papers. But Lily had spoken the one piece that mattered most. Kids don't lie about fear. Jake rose to his full height. "Mary, we're going to the judge, but when he asks, you gotta speak." Mary clenched her jaw. "He won't believe me." "He might not," Jake admitted. "But he'll believe something else." "What?" Jake nodded toward Lily. "A child telling the truth." Mary looked at her daughter, frail, tired, trembling in the cold, but eyes steady. "No," Mary whispered. "I won't let her be dragged into this." Drag her, Jake echoed. Mary, she's already in it. That poster made sure of that. Silence. Even the wind paused, like the valley itself was listening. Finally, Mary whispered, "He killed my husband." The words dropped heavy. Jake froze. Blackwood? Mary nodded once, slow and sure. Called it an accident. Said he found him by the creek. But Lily saw men standing over him before he died. Jake's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Lily saw? Lily looked down at her mittened hands. I told Mama, but she said we had to run. Twist number 2 landed like a blow. Jake gripped the wagon rail. Mary, you should have told me this sooner. I didn't trust you, she whispered. Not until last night. Not until the sheriff came. Jake didn't take offense. Out here, trust was earned through scars. He exhaled hard. All right. Then here's the truth from my side. Mary lifted her head. If Blackwood killed your husband, Jake said, then he won't stop till he owns the last thing that ties you to him. Mary's eyes filled. Lily. Jake nodded. Yeah. The valley stretched empty around them, white and silent and dangerous. Jake gripped the reins. We're going. Now. Mary whispered, Jake, will the judge listen? Jake looked straight ahead. If he's the man I think he is, yeah. And if he's not? Jake didn't hesitate, didn't waver. Then we'll fight anyway. He snapped the reins and the wagon lurched forward. Toward town, toward the judge, toward the only sliver of justice left in this winter. Lander lay under a hard winter sun, cold enough to bite, bright enough to expose every man's lie. Jake guided the wagon down the street, boots crunching ice. Mary half sat among blankets, pale and breathing shallow. Lily held her mother's coat in both hands, refusing to let go. Judge Whitaker's office sat near the end of town. Jake barely reached for the door when a tall shape blocked his way. Black coat, leather gloves, eyes sharp as pins. Mr. Ashe. Mary stiffened. Lily gasped, shrinking closer. Ashe greeted them with a thin smile. Mr. Mercer. Perfect timing. Jake's voice stayed flat. Move. No hostility needed, Ashe said, already pulling a folded document from his coat. A temporary custody order, signed by Judge Whitaker himself, 3 days ago. Mary's breath broke. Lily clutched harder. Jake took the paper, skimming it. Clean ink. Perfect phrasing. Strong enough to tear a family apart in a heartbeat. Ashe's tone softened like poisoned honey. The child is to be surrendered immediately. Not today, Jake said. That is not your choice. Jake stepped between Ashe and the wagon. It damn sure is till the judge hears her side. Ashe's polite smile barely twitched. Then let's present it to him. He pushed open the office door, expecting Jake to follow like a servant. Jake lifted Mary carefully from the wagon. She winced, fighting to keep upright. I can walk, she whispered. No, you can't, Jake murmured, lifting her into his arms. Lily followed close, stick with the red cloth held tight. Inside, the clerk froze at the sight of the group. Judge Whitaker is available, Ashe cut in, dropping his calling card. Moments later, Whitaker called them in. The judge looked from Ashe to Jake, then to Mary and Lily. Tell me why you're here. Ashe stepped forward first. Your Honor, I'm here to enforce the custody order granted to the Blackwood estate. Jake didn't wait. Judge, that order's built on lies. Mary didn't kidnap her kid. Blackwood's men hunted her through the valley. She almost died. Whitaker studied Jake's face, then Mary's hollow eyes. Mrs. Caldwell? Is this true? Mary tried to answer, but pain and fear strangled her voice. Her jaw trembled. No words came. Ash seized the silence. Your Honor, she's unstable. The child is at risk. Jake slammed his palm on the desk. Let her speak. Whitaker's hand lifted, quieting the room. Then Lily stepped forward, small, shaking, determined. My mama didn't steal me, she said. Whitaker looked down at her. Go on. They lied, Lily said. They wanted Daddy's papers. They hurt Mama. Mr. Jake saved her. Ash's lips pressed white. Whitaker leaned back slowly. Is that so? Lily nodded, clutching her stick tighter. Mary covered her mouth, tears sliding hard down her cheeks. Whitaker exhaled. Mr. Ash, this matter is not as clear as your haunt. Documents suggest. Ash's voice tightened. Your Honor, Whitaker cut him off. I am issuing a 24-hour stay. Both parties will return tomorrow with all evidence. The child remains with her mother until then. Lily let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Mary sagged, relief shaking her whole body. Ash's mask cracked. A stay will not change the outcome. We'll see, Whitaker said coldly. Jake lifted Mary again, guiding her toward the door. Lily grabbed his coat, staying glued to his side. Ash whispered as they passed, venom soft. Tomorrow, the child belongs to us. Jake didn't look back, but he tightened his grip on Mary and whispered to Lily, Not while I've still got breath. Judge Whitaker's office felt tighter the second time around. Colder, too. Like the walls themselves knew a storm bigger than winter was coming. Jake stood with one hand on the back of Mary's chair. She was upright, but barely. Fever carved shadows under her eyes. Lily perched on the edge of her seat beside her mother, clutching her red cloth stick like it was scripture. Across the room, Ash arranged his papers with a surgeon's neatness. Your Honor, he began, I've brought the full guardianship file, including affidavits concerning Mrs. Caldwell's instability. Jake's jaw flexed. Instability don't cause stab wounds or bruises. Ash ignored him. If the court reviews, Whitaker raised a hand. Mr. Ash, I'll review when I choose, not when you command it. Ash blinked once, but the cold confidence remained. Very well. Whitaker turned to Mary. Mrs. Caldwell, before I consider any document, I need to hear your account. Speak plainly. Mary's breath shook. She opened her mouth, but fear strangled the sound. Lily squeezed her hand. Mama? Mary stared at the floor, trembling. I tried to leave Blackwood land after my husband died. Why? Whitaker asked. Mary swallowed. Because they wouldn't let me mourn him. They pressed papers on me, told me he signed over Lily's guardianship, said I wasn't fit, said I'd lose everything if I didn't cooperate. Whitaker leaned forward. Did you see the signatures? Yes, Mary whispered, but he was sick. Too sick to know what he signed. Ash stepped forward. Your Honor, she has no proof of illness, Jake snapped. She's got scars, bruises, and a child who saw everything. Ash's eyes thinned. The child's testimony is irrelevant. Jake stepped toward him. "Say that again." Whitaker's voice cracked like a whip. "Enough!" Silence cut the room. Whitaker turned to Lily. "Young lady, you said yesterday you wished to speak." Lily froze, tiny shoulders stiff. Her fingers tightened around the stick until her knuckles paled. Mary whispered, "Baby, you don't have to—" But Lily stood, not tall, not steady, but brave. Whitaker softened his tone. "Tell me what you saw." Lily breathed once, shaky, uneven, then lifted her chin. "Daddy was by the creek," she said. "He fell. He was hurt. Mama screamed for help." Whitaker nodded gently. "And the men on the ridge?" Lily's eyes darkened. "They watched Daddy fall. They didn't try to help. They held papers. They kept telling Mama to sign things." Ash's voice sharpened. "This is hearsay." Jake growled low. "This is truth." Whitaker raised a hand again. "Continue, Lily." Lily swallowed. "They pushed Mama. They told her she'd lose me. They said I was Blackwood blood and worth more than she was." Mary covered her mouth. Tears spilled through her fingers. Whitaker turned slowly toward Ash. "Is this how the Blackwood estate conducts itself?" Ash's expression didn't flinch, but a faint tick pulsed in his jaw. "Your Honor, children misunderstand adult matters. She is frightened, confused." Jake took one step forward, boots heavy on the wooden floor. "She ain't confused. She's repeating what men like you taught her to fear." Whitaker tapped his desk sharply. "I'll decide what's credible." He looked again at Lily. "You said yesterday Mr. Mercer saved your mother." Lily nodded. "Mama was dying. Jake carried her. He kept us warm. He prayed for us. He didn't ask for nothing." Jake shifted, uncomfortable with praise that felt too big for him. Whitaker exhaled, long and slow. Twist number 4 dropped when Lily pointed her red cloth stick at Ash. "And he's lying," she said. "He wants me for the money Daddy left." The room went still. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Whitaker steepled his hands. "Mr. Ash?" Ash cleared his throat. "Your Honor, the trust is sizable. Naturally, the estate—" Whitaker's palm hit the desk. "Enough." He faced Jake. "Mercer, do you intend to stand with this family tomorrow, under oath?" Jake didn't blink. "I do." Whitaker nodded once. "Then you have 24 hours. Bring every piece of proof you can. Bring witnesses. Bring anything that reveals the full picture." He turned to Ash. "And you, bring the real documents, not the ones signed in the dark." Ash stiffened. Whitaker rose. "This is no longer a simple custody hearing. This is a fraud inquiry." Mary gasped softly. Lily leaned into Jake's leg. Jake lowered a hand to her shoulder. Whitaker's final words sealed the air. "Tomorrow we find the truth. All of it." Morning came brittle and blue, the kind of cold that cracked wood and tested faith. Jake stood outside the chapel with his coat buttoned tight, breath fogging the air. Mary leaned against the railing, weak but upright, Lily clinging to her skirt. "You sure?" Jake asked. Mary steadied herself. "If we don't walk in together, Ash wins before the judge even opens his mouth." Jake didn't argue. He offered his arm. She took it, not trusting him, not yet, but trusting the moment. Inside, the preacher waited, hat in hand. No flowers, no guests, just a Bible, a trembling lantern, and a thin beam of winter sunlight. Jake faced Mary. "This ain't for show. Soon as the judge rules, you're free to walk your own road." Mary nodded. "I know." Lily slipped her hand into Jake's. "Can I stay with both of you?" Jake's voice went soft. "That's the plan, kid." The ceremony was fast, quiet words, a simple vow, a ring borrowed from the church box. The preacher closed the Bible with a soft thump. Mary swayed. Jake caught her elbow. "You married now," the preacher said. "May the Lord keep you." But there was no time to breathe. They headed straight for Whitaker's office. The judge was already seated, papers stacked like ammunition. Ash stood beside him, posture rigid, jaw tight. A new document lay on the table, sealed with wax. Jake felt the air sour. "What's that?" Ash smiled thin. "The late Mr. Caldwell's final amendment. Turns out the child's trust is larger than previously stated. The estate requires full custody." Mary's knees buckled. Jake held her upright. Whitaker tapped the seal. "Where'd you find this?" "In the family vault," Ash answered. "Misplaced. Conveniently." Jake barked a humorless laugh. "Forged, you mean?" "Prove it," Ash said. Whitaker looked at Jake. "Do you have anything?" Jake reached into his coat and pulled out a folded set of papers, signed affidavits from Nell, the notary record Jake found last night, and one more document. "My renouncement," Jake said, placing it down. "If it's about money, you can cut me out. I give up any claim my marriage might give. Every cent goes to the church school and the rescue home." Whitaker's eyebrows shot up. "You're forfeiting all financial benefit?" Jake nodded. "Ain't marrying for money. I'm marrying to keep that kid alive." Ash's face cracked. Just a second. But enough. Lily stepped forward, lifting her red cloth stick like testimony. "Mama didn't steal me. He saved us. That's the truth." Whitaker examined the renouncement, then the notary note, then Ash, who suddenly looked smaller. Finally, he spoke. "Temporary custody is hereby awarded to Mrs. Caldwell and her lawful husband, Jake Mercer. The court denies the Blackwood petition pending fraud investigation." Ash inhaled, sharp, bitter. "You can't—" "I can," Whitaker snapped. "Now get out of my courtroom." Ash left stiff as frozen rope. Mary collapsed into the chair, covering her face. Lily threw her arms around Jake's waist. Whitaker leaned back. "You bought time. And maybe justice." Jake lifted Lily into his arms, steady and sure. Mary rose slowly, meeting Jake's eyes. Not fear now, not doubt. Something steadier. The judge nodded toward the door. "Take your family home, Mercer." Jake didn't breathe for a moment. Then he whispered the only words that mattered. "You're not alone anymore." And for the first time since the blizzard, the world outside didn't feel like it was closing in. And that's how a cold, merciless winter turned into a new beginning for Jake, Mary, and little Lily. In a world that tried to break them, they chose to stand together and found a family stronger than fear. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share your memories, your wisdom, or simply where you're watching from. Your voices mean more than you know. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight.